Good afternoon from sunny and warm Greece. So I am the director of the Greek Geo office, and I serve as a member of the Geo program board since 2015. And I'm very excited to moderate the first day plenary session, which is dedicated to urban resilient cities and human settlements, Geo's awaited fourth engagement priority. So during our session, please share any comments that you have for the program board through the chat box, but especially for questions for the panelists, use the Q&A box at any point, and all panelists will do their best to respond in writing to your questions, or we'll pick them up to discuss during the QA slots or during the panel discussion. Well, the purpose of this session at this stage is not that much to inform, but rather to initiate a lively conversation within the Geo community of the upcoming fourth engagement priority. What shall it focus on, and what would that mean for GW activities and Geo members and participating organizations? How can anyone get involved? What are implications for existing and new activities? What are the gaps and opportunities? To trigger the discussion and hopefully address these questions, we have with us Catherine Brubach from the Resilient Cities Network, who oversees the design and delivery of the network programs across the urban landscape and connects city needs with resilient solutions from partners and investors. We have Stella Psaropoulou, Deputy Chief Resilient Officer and Strategic Urban Planning Officer of the very active city of Thessaloniki, also responsible for the city's Urban Resilience Observatory within the Thessaloniki 2030 Resilient Strategy. We have Aji Kavada from NASA, the Executive Director of the EU for SDG Initiative. Ifigenia Keramitoglu, space expert from the Institute for Astronomy, Astrophysics, Space Applications and Remote Sensing of the National Observatory of Athens, and member of the Global Urban Observation and Information Initiative. And last, Thomas Kemper, the leader of the Global Human Settlement Layer project at the European Commission Joint Research Center and member of the Human Planet Initiative. So without further delay, I will pass the floor to Thomas to set the stage by introducing us with the latest urbanization trends and where Geo currently stands in this domain. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this difficult task of 5 minutes to address all the issues of urbanization today. So I'll try to point really to only the most pressing things. And to start with, I would like to tell you some statistics that you're maybe not so aware of, because all of you probably heard this figure of 56% of people living in urban areas that is announced by the UN usually, but this is based on very different national definitions. And this is where we have been working also in Geo in the past to come up with a harmonized definition. And this degree of urbanization was accepted last year by the UN Statistical Commission. And it has a bit a different view, because it doesn't look only at the urban rural, but it also looks at the full spectrum of settlements that is out there. So there's on the one hand the rural part, which is in 2015 24%, and towns and semi-dense areas 28, and cities 48. So if we would join those two classes of cities, towns and semi-dense areas, we would come up with already 76% of a somewhat urban population. Just to tell you that there's maybe the world is already much more urbanized than we think it is. But let's have a look and go to the next slide, please, at how people are living today. And I picked here really 3 emblematic examples of urban ways of living now. There's hundreds of thousands of very different examples, but they show very, very different problems also. So the first one was the favela in Brazil, that very often is poorly constructed. We have problems of overcrowding, and you see already on those steep slopes, it's very prone for landslides. But moreover, for the people living there, very often it's very difficult to get to public services and to their jobs. So there's a lot of movement necessary in and out of those formal, informal settlements. While the opposite, well, not always the opposite. The second example then shows residential suburbs, very well planned. You see always some nice gardens, a lot of cars also, and that's also one of the problems. Also, those people here are far away from services and jobs, but they tend to have cars and can commute with the cars, but this is then creating a lot of environmental problems. We need a lot of road infrastructure. We have air pollution due to the traffic jams, etc. And to connect those people here to the public transport is very, very difficult. Move now to the next slide. We should see the something that probably everybody would say, yes, this is the city of the future. This is a smart city with all services being connected. You have no problem to move from A to B with public transport, etc. But also the current COVID crisis showed that those areas also have problems. We may have a lack of open spaces where people have some space to meet, not too close together. So that's one of the issues. And another big problem is also the rental prices. The investment here for a normal family, it's impossible to find housing here. That is really something that also has to be taken into account. So if we move to the next slide, we can show what the future will bring. And we see here a strong increase. We see here again the three classes of rural at the bottom, in the middle, the towns and semi-dense areas. And the strongest, steepest curve here has the city part. And we see here a strong increase of 1.5 billion from today until the year 2050. And that means we have to construct housing for 1.5 million new city dwellers. And we better start now thinking on how this urban development should look like. Because going back to my slide examples from the pictures, for sure we don't want the favela type development. But on the other hand, we cannot afford also this suburban growth that consumes more and more land. So there we need to find smart solutions. And on the next slide, I will show a bit on where I think this urbanization should go. Because what for sure we need to achieve is an economic and socially equitable growth without further cost to the environment. We all know that we are almost beyond having an influence on the changing climate. So we have to prioritize sustainable urbanization and critical development changes that can be addressed. So I just name here a few of them. So energy and transport, climate change mitigation and adaptation. This is where 75% of the emissions are coming from. It's from urban areas. So there we have a strong task to work on. Disaster preparedness, of course, but also water consumption and production are relevant, and biodiversity. And GEO is already today doing a lot in different fields, and I show that on the next slide. Where you can see that GEO is active in this field already. There's several activities and community, so initiatives and community activities that are working with stakeholder communities, city networks. We have people here in the panel, but also on the UN side with UN Habitat. And we have been trying to expose what Earth observation can do. And I will give 3 examples now from the core activities that address specifically urban topics, but many others are also working in the field. And the first one that I'm also a member of is the Human Planet Initiative that provides global free and open data about population and the built environment. And they're working already quite closely with decision makers and scientists to make useful data for science and decision making. One of the flagship products is the Atlas of the Human Planet that really tries to provide information digested from all those big data sets but readily usable for policy. Yes, Wednesday later in the day a session also that tries to invite others to join the effort. Then we will see also more from this from RG in a minute. The EU for Sustainable Development activities, they had this very strong focus on SDG 11 and the urban toolkit that will be shown in a minute. And the last one on the next slide is the global urban observation and information, where again we see an example of how the initiative is improving urban monitoring and assessment, with an example from urban heat island and extreme heat analysis. And I stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Thomas, very, very much. I think we are all convinced about the urgency of for actions of both global and geo level. So now let's have a brief first discussion with our esteemed city level experts, Catherine and Stella. Please put on your cameras. And I would, since Thomas has introduced to the main problems and issues for cities, I would like to have your perspective on the most prominent issues for cities. There are many, and it's a complex landscape, unambiguously. So could you prioritize a few urban issues that this community, geo community, should focus on from your side? Stella, you have the floor.
Hi, hello for me. I think that the issues that we've heard, yes, they're quite prominent. They're actually challenges that we have to face as cities. I kept climate change, mitigation and adaptation. It's #1 on our agenda, and it should be #1 in our agenda, because a lot of crises have an interrelation with the climate change. Even energy and transport, and risk preparedness and risk reduction is one issue that we have to be actually prepared, strategically prepared, because cities are complex systems and crisis will never end. So we're facing for the past 1 year and a half pandemic, and that can brought us how preparedness and on health issues and other issues can actually provide a bad, bad planning, and how can we actually operationalize it, national directions in cities. I could actually mention housing and affordable housing that can be an issue in cities, as we've seen, and also food systems. It's not only the water consumption, is all the food system, and how can we set all the food system, and how can we connect, the rural areas with the urban areas, and how can we learn, because we have forgotten actually, how can we actually cultivate food, and how can we bring it to our plates. So I think that urban issues, from my perspective, can be, all that with climate change to be on the front line.
Excellent, Stella, and this is coming directly from the city level administration, from your point. So Catherine, you working within a network of cities, what are your insights, and maybe especially for developing countries? Please take the floor.
Thank you so much. I guess what Stella has just presented and what we heard before is very clear. So you're asking what is the biggest issue in cities? So I don't think there is one single biggest issue in cities, and we heard that from Gilberto, and my heart opened when I heard about the Global South. The issue is that cities face multiple challenges, and that can be urban heat, that can be affordable housing, that can be the lack of urban services. Thomas put that out very clearly. So do I have access to water? Do I have access to energy? How do I get from A to B? How do I actually manage to go to work in the morning? Can I afford a car or not? And it doesn't matter where you look, if you go and look at our cities in Europe or North America, and having said North America, we have seen issues around structural racism, which became a major issue in our cities, which has nothing to do with climate change, but all to do with equity and the aspect about unfair treatment. So I think when we are looking at cities, and I think this is something we as urban resilience practitioners care deeply about, is to recognize that there are multiple challenges out there. And I think we have heard that climate change clearly is a major issue. Rapid urbanization is a massive issue, much more in the global south, because there we already look at cities where half of the population doesn't have access to sustainable services. So meaning these cities are growing like hell, and the governments can't actually cope with that. And that relates very much to what Thomas also indicated, infrastructure development. It's not only about services, it's about developing infrastructure. And if we look fast forward to 2050 and we look at the growth which is going to happen in Africa and in Southeast Asia mostly, 70% of the public infrastructure doesn't even exist to serve the cities and the citizens. And I guess the point I want to make here, so if you look at our network, yes, food is a major topic, and I guess the pandemic has highlighted some very, very systemic and systemic challenges in the city, and it's not only a public health issue, it became a food issue, it became a water and sanitation issue, it became a mobility issue. And I'm talking this evening from Singapore, one city who is like most probably one of the most perfect ones in the world. The public transport system was down, and it's still down because people don't use it, and nothing has happened. It's still functioning perfectly fine. So I think what is important is that cities are dealing with multiple challenges. And from a resilience perspective, and that was mentioned around disasters, and I want to say this, resilience is more than just responding to disasters. It means that the way cities are managing their transformation with your solutions or the solutions you provide in future will largely depend on, or largely be defined on how they are able to understand and comprehend how certain issues impact their systems, and how a disruption on one side will be affected by the other, and how that shapes institutions, solutions, and so on. And I guess having said that, this is where data and information is needed for decision making. And you are the guys who are providing data and information. And it's not only about, and I guess in the global south, about them producing that data, but having access to reliable data and build decisions on that data and plan based on that data. Most of the cities we are working with, they don't even know how many people they have living in their environments. So we have been having discussions. Are we extending the water supply to 20,000 or 500,000? And they just don't know, because they don't know where to get that information from. And I guess this is where I see you guys come.
Great, thanks, Katrina. I think both your interventions have been aligning with Thomas's presentation, and actually you have given us a much broader perspective. And we definitely need to ensure that GEO is enabled to produce really targeted and tangible outcomes with this engagement priority in place. So now I'll take up a few minutes to describe the main points and implications of the engagement plan for the new priority, as was prepared by the Urban Resilience Subgroup and was endorsed and initially approved by the Program Board and the EXCOM. The discussion began back in 2016 when the urban resilience was the new urban agenda was first adopted by UN Habitat. Then in 2019, the discussion was revived upon the request for support on urban indicators by UN Habitat, and in response, GEO created a task force and then a subgroup. And this subgroup created and proposed to the EXCOM to make urban resilience an engagement priority. Then in early 2020, we changed the name, which was another milestone, from urban resilience to resilient cities and human settlements, to somehow expand the definition of cities, as Thomas explained earlier. And now we are looking forward the November plenary for official approval of the priority as the fourth engagement priority in GEO. Next, please. So the main objectives is to determine how Earth observation can actually assist the implementation of the new urban agenda, and in practical terms contribute to the progress assessment that's going to be taking place every 4 years. How to engage citizen stakeholders in order to understand their needs, which is very essential, but also something that Jana mentioned, how to communicate the right messages of what GEO can offer to them. How can we actually exploit and develop new tools and services in support of the new urban agenda and sustainable urbanization? How can we encourage new activities in the work program, but also how can we give greater visibility in the existing activities? And something very important, how can we create synergies with the GEO existing engagement priorities and the regional GEOs? So having said that, the impact that we expect from engagement priority is for the outer world, the cities and the countries, to understand the value and usefulness of Earth observation and actually be able to have ready to uptake tools for their everyday operations. And within GEO, how, and this is something that again was mentioned by Gilberto, if I'm not wrong, how we can adapt our work program in order to meet their expectations, and how can we better engage with a wider range of key organizations like NSOs, subnational actors, and the cities themselves. Next, please. So, who is involved or who can get involved in this engagement priority? And I'm starting from the bottom. So it's the GEO community itself, the GEO member, the countries, the POs, the associates, and the different work program activities. And in an analog to the existing engagement priorities, there's going to be a working group dedicated to this engagement priority to place the activity within the GEO work program and provide a more permanent platform for its operation. Also, UN agencies with relevant policy responsibilities like UN Habitat, UNDRR, and a number of other UN level organizations. But this is the engagement priority that really needs to reach out to the end users. And with end users, we are talking about cities and human settlements, and this can be accomplished through intermediary organizations, but also with the cities themselves, as we already started discussing today. And something that Gilberto mentioned is that we also need to change the business model in the urban resilience world. This is essential. So yes, we envisage that the role of the SMMEs is going to be crucial, and we expect role like providing the solutions and the services, but also triggering investments in different sectors in the urban domain. Next, please. So we expect many implications and many benefits for both the work program activities and the countries and the cities. And these implications and benefits include sharing and learning good practices for urban Earth observation usage, understanding the needs and requirements of cities in various regions and how to adapt to them, developing methods to improve national and city reporting under the new urban agenda, leveraging the strengths of the private sector in expanding the potential of Earth observation-based solutions, learning about and receiving funding from new resource mobilization opportunities, integrating nature-based solutions that can directly address and contribute to increased urban resilience, improving urban decisions regarding, for example, as already mentioned, informal dwellings, greening of cities, transport, air quality, and so on and so forth, enhancing operational preparedness, as Stella said, readiness, and the ability to deliver guidance to urban regions in response to emergency situations, as for example, the COVID-19, both in terms of immediate response and future recovery, informing GEO members on policy priorities, research programs, and enabling activities that were previously not possible in a cost-effective manner, and particularly in developing countries. And I think this is my last presentation of the engagement plan. And this is time for a very brief Q&A break. So if we have already any questions that we should be addressing in the Q&A session, I see already one coming from Kathy. Part of the resiliency question is infrastructure, as you've mentioned. So part of infrastructure increasingly is free Wi-Fi connectivity. What is the line of thinking regarding EU for resilient cities and the infrastructure required for Wi-Fi, cell tower or fiber connection power, etc.? So do we have any of the panelists? Catherine, you would like to take the floor, please?
So thank you so much for the question. I think I don't have specifically an example to share around Wi-Fi, although I must admit, like when we set up, so we were part of the work after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, and one of the major issues, as everybody can imagine, that the whole telecommunication system was down, and there was a big conversation around how can you make telecommunication or communication infrastructure in general more resilient? And I think this is the topic we are dealing with a lot. And when I'm saying infrastructure, it actually covers all infrastructure, so not only infrastructure for free Wi-Fi. However, I think there's a lot of work going on globally at the moment, what resilience infrastructure is, and how you actually establish infrastructure in a way that it responds to shocks and stresses, but also that it creates co-benefits. And that is something we have been looking into in certain cities, and I can't exactly say which one, but regarding free Wi-Fi, there was the question, can we establish street lighting so that the lampposts are designed in a different way, that you have actually different kind of infrastructure there, that it's not only providing light during nighttime, but that you also have sensors there, that you have potentially Wi-Fi, I don't know, you call them routers or something like that. So, and I think this is the part when we are talking about resilience infrastructure is how can you build and plan for infrastructure in a different way so that you have multiple co-benefits. So something is not just a cell tower anymore, it's a cell tower plus. And that requires that they start thinking differently about infrastructure and how they build it. And I'm sorry if I did not address it 100%, but that is how we think about resilience infrastructure.
Thomas, yeah?
Yes, very quickly. I think Geo already provides a lot of information. So in the first place, if you want to reach people, you need to know where they are. And with the data that we are providing also through Geo, such population information is available, and then you can combine it with other geospatial analysis on line of sight, etc., to understand where to put those locations. So I think Geo definitely has a role and can support those activities. Of course, not planning for countries their own networks, but supporting with free and open data.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So moving on with the session, yeah. As already mentioned, there is obviously a gap on how we are communicating the benefits of Earth observation to city stakeholders. And our knowledge of things that are already happening out there probably fall behind sometimes. So now I would like to call on Arzi, if we would like to introduce us with the Earth observation toolkit and your colleagues' attempt to collect use cases with city relevance in this line. Arzi?
Yes. Thank you very much, Evangelos, and hello, everyone. So today I want to talk to you about this collaborative effort and partnership that involves many contributors from the Geo community, as well as the UN Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, in addition to a number of local as well as national governments, so including city authorities and urban planners, national statistics office representatives, ministry representatives, as well as academia, NGOs, and the private sector, who have come together to develop this online resource called Earth Observations Toolkit for Sustainable Cities and Human Settlements. And so the main driver behind this has been to help really provide relevant information in terms of Earth observation data as well as tools, use cases, and training or other capacity development material, and make it available to both decision makers as well as analysts at the local level, as well as at the city and national government level. In addition to that, another objective and driver behind this effort has been to really facilitate shared learning and help enable further collaboration between local communities from city to city, as well as from the city to the country and also regional level. And so this toolkit has been launched earlier this year as part of the UN Statistical Commission, and it is the result of this very collaborative multi-stakeholder approach and effort. Let's go to the next slide, please. So as mentioned, and I do invite you while I'm speaking to go to visit this site. So eotoolkit.unhabitat.org is the site, and so this is it's an ongoing live resource that is continually updated as more work is being developed and new information becomes available. I talked about the fact that it does include a suite or a catalog of ready-to-use Earth observation data and tools. And there are different ways to look at that information. So one of the ways in which we have categorized it has been under 4 primary thematic areas, including adequate housing, access to public transport, sustainable urbanization, and open public spaces for shared use. And so these 4 areas correspond to 4 UN-defined targets and related indicators under Sustainable Development Goal 11, but also relate to the new urban agenda and priorities that are in alignment with specific monitoring needs that cities have expressed that are involved in this effort. And so in addition, there are use cases that help highlight opportunities as well as challenges where local governments have already applied Earth observation data to address and inform some of these SDG 11 indicators, in addition to complementary metrics that help them really provide cost and time savings in urban monitoring, and also address specific data gaps, for instance, in areas where perhaps conventional data collection techniques are more difficult, or to help fill gaps in information derived from census data. And so in addition to in these use cases, you can find also information about how cities and national governments are using and leveraging Earth observations and geospatial information more broadly to also inform other urban-related metrics, such as urban environmental quality indices that involve greenness of open spaces, or look at aspects of air quality in cities, as well as surface stability, for example, to assess impact of different types of activities on public infrastructure and residential buildings. So this is really a work in progress. And as part of this presentation today, I do want to take a moment and share a video recording from one of the contributors to this effort, Dylan Wickley, who is an urban planner at the city of Johannesburg, and he will talk here about some of the ways in which they've already been using Earth observations to inform urban land use management policies, and also some of the additional opportunities and challenges in terms of using Earth observation data in their city. So let's go to that video, Evangelos.
My name is Dylan Weekly, and I'm an urban planner at the City of Johannesburg Metropolitan Municipality. I also have a special interest in GIS and Earth observation, and I'm busy studying part-time towards a master's in GIS and remote sensing at the Wits University here in Johannesburg. The City of Joburg does use Earth observation data, but we certainly need to expand our capacity in this field, and that's why we're very excited about this project. Much of the data or products that are available to us generated through Earth observation data are available commercially, so they're difficult to procure, but also very expensive. We also have a lot of data available for integration with Earth observation data, which we believe is underutilized, and have included some examples here: administrative data, including our town planning application,
I think we're having some problems with the sound. But I think, yeah, this serves as an excellent example of things that are already happening. It's unfortunate that we can go through the whole of the video. Of course, it was a big video. So yeah, maybe we can get back to Aji.
Yes, and so what we will do is, apologies for the video not working, but we do have the link, and perhaps Evangela or I can include the link to the video to the chat, and colleagues can listen to it offline.
That would be great, yeah. Aji, you are muted.
Okay, apologies for that. So I was suggesting that maybe we can include the link to the video to the chat, and I can do that, and so colleagues can listen to Dylan's perspectives offline. And so to conclude, we are working across this number of organizations and with representatives from a geographically representative group. And we have formed 4 working groups at the moment to help further make the information further relevant and really help bring to surface additional challenges, but also enable the sharing of experiences and the cross-learning. And so we have 4 groups right now that are focusing on enabling further impact, and we're looking for opportunities to further engage with both local organizations, including civil society organizations, as well as city networks, in addition to further engagement and partnerships with the non-public sector. In addition to that, the group is developing, so one of the working groups is focusing on developing different types of awareness and capacity development material. So these range from short tutorials or webinars to hands-on activities that at different workshops or meetings that involve guiding through the use of specific tools or presenting specific use cases of how other cities have implemented the use of Earth observations in combination with other data sources to address specific urban monitoring needs. In addition, we're looking at aspects of developing good practices about better exchanging both knowledge and data across cities and from city to country. And lastly, looking at the fair data principles, and so how these are already, we're further exploring how the information currently available through this resource is meeting fair data principles, and also we're doing that with the view of also augmenting this resource and adding more use cases and information in the future. And so what I want to do is invite you to visit the website and try and look at the resources, provide your feedback. If you have specific tools or data or use cases that you see would be adding value, please offer those. And also would love to have you join us. We really want to make this as comprehensive and inclusive effort as possible. So please write to us and join our working groups. And thank you very much.
Okay, we thank you very much, Arji. So actually, through our engagement with the cities, the existence of use cases has always been a challenge, and especially in a language that is common between our community and the cities, and really demonstrates the efforts of our activities that can produce direct, ready-to-uptake services and the products for the cities. So I would like to bring now forward another critical point. How can Earth observation actually support applications that are addressing an urban issue in the real world? And how can this incorporate it in the stakeholders' everyday workflows and businesses, either through a service or through an application, whether it is commercial or not, that reaches stakeholders and citizens in a very direct manner? And for this, I call on Iphigenia to provide us with such an example, and show that there is indeed such a way of doing things, and we might want to discuss the difficulty, of such a device also later on in our panel discussion. So, Iphigenia, we'd like to hear your example.
Thank you very much, Evangelos. Thank you all. Firstly, I would like to set the scene about this example. As we're talking about urban heat, it has already been mentioned that it is one of the top challenges that is faced by the cities. So here, let me just discriminate between the urban heat island effect, that is a natural effect, and it is because the cities are warmer than the rural areas. And the extreme heat due to heat waves, that it is enhanced due to the urban heat island phenomenon. And it is always affected by, affects its magnitudes and duration. So heat waves is the problem, not necessarily the urban heat island. Next, please. And this has been recognized by many international organizations like the World Health Organization and the Red Cross, Red Crescent Climate Center. There are many guidelines around. This example is taken from the Heat Wave Guide for Cities from the Red Cross, Red Crescent Climate Center that shows that heat waves have an impact on health, service provision, nature, infrastructure, and economy. And here you see the amazing effect, the devastating effect it has on mortality. And these are the number of deaths during the big heat wave in Europe in 2003. Next, please. So there is a lot of discussion about information regarding temperature, monitoring temperature. And there is also some kind of confusion on which temperature we are talking about. Because it's different when we're talking about stations and satellites. So I'm trying very, very briefly to elaborate on this. So the variation is really big. It is diurnal, it is seasonal, as you can see on the right-hand side plot. This is from a paper. So this is a pixel. It shows the land surface temperature and how it varies within a year and diurnally. So you see that there is a lot of variation, which means that if you have one measurement at one moment in time, if you have a satellite image, it doesn't necessarily means that you have information about that you have information about the conditions in the city in terms of heat. There are three sources of data or information. It's better to say information. One is stations, local stations. So the advantages are they are quite accurate for the location that they are placed. Sometimes they have a very long record, so you can see trends, you can see climate change in this particular area, and they monitor in the majority measures air temperature. The disadvantages is that these measurements are localized and the network of the stations is sparse. So you cannot monitor what is happening in the city. Then you have models. With models, you have global perspective, which is very good. They integrate measurements from other sources, which is again a big benefit. And they provide information about both air and land surface temperature. The disadvantage is that it is a model, it's not directly a measurement, and they are coarse resolution. And then you have satellites, which are global, they are data, so it's not an estimation, it is actually a measurement, but they provide the land surface temperature and not the air temperature, at least not directly. And with data, they carry, of course, the limitations of data, like cloudiness, for example, and they are coarse, not as coarse as models, but still coarse. And the question is, what is the timeliness of this data? Next, please. Here are only some examples. So there is collaboration with the three biggest international city networks, C40, the Resilient City Networks. Katrin is here in the panel. We have collaborated in the past, ICLI. There are some initiatives that you can see on the top right, and also there are groups that are working with urban heat, and they are providing services.
either to cities directly, or they are research groups. So I'm mentioning here Forth with Nektarios Chrysoulakis and the University of Bochum. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing correctly, with Benjamin Bechtel. And there is the example of Extrema that started as a European project. It is connected with civil protection, with the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. It has provided services directly to cities, but via a mobile application, it has also provided services to the citizens. So here is an example of how data can actually take all the way to take data to the citizens, make them usable, and also foster the culture of self-protection, which is, I think, very important for heat. So I think that this is one of the main issues here. I'm going to finish here by saying that there is no global solution of the self. Cities have their own, they have their own specifications, they want their own things. So you have to have a dialogue with the city in order to have success, in order to give something that is going to be useful and used by the city. And with the next slide, I'm going to thank you for your attention. This is from Athens, a campaign at schools with Cool Athens, as it was called.
Okay, thank you very much, Iphigenia. Very nice example of how we should, and this is really actually a great challenge, how to reach not only city stakeholders, but also the citizens themselves. So I think this concludes our presentations that meant to trigger further discussion with our panelists, but also with the rest of the participants. So feel free to use again the chat or raise your hand and take the floor if you want to raise a question to our panelists directly or the Q&A. So moving to the panel discussion now, I have one first question that I would like to address mainly to our city resilient experts. So as you probably have heard, there are already 3 engagement priorities in GEO. That would be the Sustainable Development Goals, the disaster risk reduction, and climate change, including both mitigation and adaptation. And we are working on the urban resilience as a 4th engagement priority. So how do you see urban resilience serving as the glue of the other 3 policy frames? Stella, Catherine, or anybody from the panelists, please feel free.
Can I start?
Yeah, Stella, please.
Yeah, okay. So urban resilience is all about how the city's fabric can cope with challenges, all the global challenges, crises, and how it can create solutions in a more integrated and inclusive, forward-looking manner. So resilience should not be just, the target. It's an ongoing process, and what we have figured out the past 6 years here in Thessaloniki. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of working, planning, and constructing, actually, to future-proof our systems. Cities are dynamic, complex systems, and that was pointed out here now by COVID-19. So urban resilience has now a broader meaning that needs to include holistic perspective and to prepare every element of a city that could have a direct or indirect impact from a crisis. So from my perspective, urban resilience encompasses SDGs, disaster risk reduction, and climate change, and they all should be considered as a framework to be prioritized within the strategic planning of a city.
Great. Someone else from the panel?
So maybe just so Stella has put everything perfectly out what resilience is all about, and I think when we are talking about Earth observation, it's about solutions on how you address these frameworks and how you fit into that frameworks. And I think as I really like the way you describe it, that resilience is actually the clue between all of that. And I strongly believe that. And I think looking at solutions, and that's also what Iphigenia said, is I think like cities have to recognize that they have multiple shocks and stresses they need to address, and that in any way, any solution they are looking for also needs to address multiple challenges at the same time. Because if they are constantly only looking for one solution that only addresses one challenge they have, they will never ever be able to address all the problems they have. And I think this is where Earth observation can help, and we heard these examples. So how can you help cities to understand what the challenges are, what the risks are, and then interconnect different bits and pieces, like mobility and air quality, like urban heat islands effect and housing, and how does all that comes together in the built environment. So I guess it's about moving away from the status quo kind of business as usual we have done, but recognizing how your amazing solutions can actually help cities address multiple challenges they have at the same time. And if you are able to do that, and that represents this clue, then cities feel much more confident, because then they know they are more efficient in actually the way they are looking forward.
Yeah, thank you, Katrin. So I keep the message that actually the cities are probably the optimum natural laboratory for have all these policy frames implement and actually unfold all these complexities that exist. If we do it for the cities, then we are in a better position also for the rest of the world, probably. So moving on, however, this is a great challenge for GEO. So I would like also to ask the GEO community, the panelists, but also from the audience, if you want to intervene, what are the gaps and the opportunities that you see in terms of implementing this engagement priority? Any kind of gaps and opportunities, for example, like how should we be accessing funds? How should we be engaging with the city communities? There are many things that we need to do. So where should we start from? What are the gaps that we need to fill up first? Please, from the panel or from the audience, just raise your hands and you'll be given the floor. I think we will be spending 10 more minutes according to Wembo in the session, because we had a delayed start because we moved to the parallel sessions. So Wadji, you wanted to say something on this, a comment, please.
Yes, so first of all, I think that there is a big opportunity for the GEO community to work together to really help identify the right linkages between the urban resilience priority and the other three engagement priorities to help amplify GEO's impact, by helping also really enable a bottom-up approach, especially through the urban resilience priority. So really highlighting input from local and city authorities too, and integrating that with global policy frameworks such as the SDGs, the disaster risk reduction, Sentai framework, and also the climate, the Paris Agreement. In addition, I think that there is an opportunity really to help through this fourth engagement priority provide greater visibility to ongoing activities and also specific user-oriented and user co-developed products and EU solutions, such as some of the items that were presented today, the Earth Observations Toolkit and many others that are relevant to resilient cities and human settlements. And so help work really across GEO to facilitate further use and application of these solutions and resources to address local needs, especially by looking at, for instance, different organizations and also different types of cities with different characteristics, including, for example, cities that are experiencing different climate change pressures. A challenge that we recognize, and I think you've highlighted as well, is that there is a gap currently in expanded participation of private sector, in particular small, medium, and micro-sized enterprises. And so I think that there is a significant role for these entities, both in terms of helping provide and co-develop solutions and services, but also from the resource mobilization perspective. And thus, that may be one area where I would point us to doing more work. And of course, the last thing that I'll mention is really further more expanded participation and engagement with city networks. I know we have some great representatives here today with us, and so it would be fantastic to help bring those into the GEO community efforts even more and integrate these activities to also help amplify the messages. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Excellent. Aji, I think we have time for one more intervention. Thomas, please.
Yes, I fully support what Aji just said. I think on top of that, having this new priority in GEO, it will also be really an opportunity for working more together on a common topic of interest. I think by putting out the problems and issues that we are facing with urbanization, will maybe also allow other activities in GEO to really see, I have data that actually can be used if we integrate it, and we can come up with new information that might be of help. I think that is really a good opportunity. And another opportunity, I think, is also that by spelling it out and having it really high level in the work program will facilitate also to find funding, because then it's clear this is important for GEO, and institutions that are supporting GEO will recognize it, and it will be much easier to convince them.
Yeah. I think that you're right. I think investments, I think cities are the places where many investments are already happening. So this is a great opportunity so that we direct some of these investments also for the use of Earth observation. So I don't see any further questions in the Q&A. Siri has been contributing with some replies. Thank you, Siri. And Kathy is asking if major cities have chief resilient officers. So again, I think more and more cities are now investing in this domain, and they are assigning people, and they having offices that really do this job about resilience in the city. So that's a really good thing to be happening. And this is actually those that we will be interfacing with in the engagement priority. So I think it's time to close up this first plenary session. I'll keep the last thing said by Thomas. Is the best opportunity for all of us to work together and make the better out of Earth observation data for our cities. And with this opportunity, I would like to thank all the panelists for being part of this session, and all participants that were patient enough to listen, and wish very nice and smooth continuation of our GEO Symposium. Thank you, everybody, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.